Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, doesn't this just do it? This is Robservations, episode number 635. Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, I am your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, blah, 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 evangelist of the imagination, existential Mr. Rogers. For whatever reason, a lot of technical difficulties are happening, but I'm still Robcasting at you, you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. Good to be here on a Friday. This is, once again, Robservations episode number 635, the show, as you know, about something. And gosh, would it surprise any of you to know that I want to talk about Star Trek? But I want to talk about Star Trek in a number of different ways you might not be expecting. First and foremost being, did you know that John Hughes, the director of movies like The Breakfast Club or producer of movies like Pretty in Pink, wrote a Star Trek script? Perhaps he did, under a pseudonym? Did you know this? I didn't know this. See, there's something to learn almost every day about my beloved franchise that I didn't know before. And yesterday, Fact Trek like facts, just the facts, ma'am, Fact Trek, FACTTREK.com, facttrek.com, published an article yesterday called A Con-Noonian Thing. A Con-Noonian Thing. Get it? Very, very, very clever. Let me delve into this with you right now because it is amazing. It's an article that Fact Trek put up. March 4th, 1983. Paramount Pictures, the development department, issued coverage, notes, and feedback on a proposed Star Trek feature film screenplay. Not The Search for Spock, which was already in the works, but the script for a proposed film you have never heard of. It's got no Kirk, no Spock, no Starship Enterprise, no Federation, no Klingons, and only one familiar name. One big familiar name. Khan. When Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan opened to Boffo box office and a record opening weekend, it appears the studio pounced on the idea of making sequels and spin-offs. And just days after the film's opening, it was reported, not one to rest on its laurels, Paramount is already preparing Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, and according to Paramount president at the time, Michael Eisner, there may even be a future movie about the fate of Khan, the villain in Star Trek II, played with Corbin relish by Ricardo Montalban. But while there were rumors of such a thing, such as a supposed project titled Prison Planet, set on Khan's planet of SETI Alpha 5, they were seemingly just that. Not 8 months after the film's release, the studio received a hefty screenplay. Not for a sequel, but a prequel to both the movie and the 1960s TV episode that inspired it. The script was called The Rise of Khan. It's a prospective prequel. We'd never heard of this before, so imagine our surprise. By the way, Fact Trek is a very reputable website. We'd never heard of this before, so imagine our surprise when our friend and author of the excellently researched book, The First Star Trek Movie, Buy It Here, Sherilyn Connolly, handed us a folder full of documents related to the development of Star Trek the Motion Picture, within which was a 6-page memo covering this script and story. By the way, if you want to buy Sherilyn Connolly's book, The First Star Trek Movie, you can buy it right here. I'll put it in the live chat. So check that out. Check it out. There you go. She and we scoured the internet and the trades, and thus far we haven't found a damn thing on this script, though we will keep looking. We can only assume that the development was never announced, and given the nature of the coverage, we doubt it went any further than this first draft script. No one we know has ever seen the script or any treatment leading to it, but the memo makes plain that a full screenplay, SP, existed and gives a page count of 138 pages. Ooh, bad number. Bad number. You don't want to go over 120 pages. But anyway, that clocks out to almost 2 hours and 20 minutes for a film of this type, but first drafts often run long or short. Very, very interesting. And now look at this. Here is the document in question. This is actually what standard coverage, studio coverage looks like, ladies and gentlemen. This is a piece of paper. I used to write coverage. So what you have here is it starts out with a synopsis, usually a one-page synopsis, and then there are notes. Author John Hughes, The Rise of Khan. First draft, January 21st, 1983, which is very exciting. And the caption of this is, "The Smoking Gun, top of the cover page to date, the only known document we've seen about this film project. What's notable is who are not included in the distribution list. Star Trek II executive producer Harv Bennett and Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry. The one thing we do know is the screenwriter's name, John Hughes. Now, the lack of reporting or corroborating paperwork means we can't, at this point, state with absolute and 100% certainty that this John Hughes is the famed writer-director who penned Mr. Mom and National Lampoon's Vacation in this period and later wrote and directed many iconic 1980s films like The Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles." I'd never heard of this until yesterday, so I am fascinated by this story. It's pretty amazing. Here's fact check going on about this amazing discovery. One thing we do know is the screenwriter's name, John Hughes, and the case for him, it being him, is almost airtight. First, while a writer mostly known for comedies and teen dramas might seem as unlikely a choice for a sci-fi action adventure as casting Mr. Mom to play Batman, Hughes had rewritten the screenplay for the swashbuckling adventure film Nate and Hayes, titled Savage Islands in some countries. That film was released by Paramount in late 1983, so he was clearly on the studio's radar. Second, the coverage mentions the story's similarities to The Count of Monte Cristo. The opening of Rise is a direct lift, the protagonist of which is named Edmond Dante, a name Hughes sometimes employed as a pseudonym in Beethoven and Made in Manhattan. And now here's another interesting bit of lore. Let me tee this up for you so you can see this article, because all of this is very fascinating to me. Look at this. Mr. Mom author defies tinsel typewriter image. This is in the Los Angeles Times, Wednesday, November 23rd, 1983. He wrote Mr. Mom, one of the year's most successful comedies, and in a week he wrote Vacation, one of 1983's other big comedies, in 4 days. He has since finished a half dozen more original screenplays, 2 of which he is directing himself. "I've never understood that business about the blank page driving writers to drink," says 33-year-old wunderkind John Hughes. "I love the sight of a blank page." Hughes is arguably Hollywood's hottest writer and perhaps its least known success story. The less than impressive release this week of another film bearing his name, Nate and Hayes, which he helped rewrite, apparently hasn't fazed him. In his first major interview, Hughes turned out to be a boyish, genial, and unassuming, hardly the frenzied, pill-popping writing machine one might expect. By Hollywood standards, Hughes is a genuine eccentric, a self-described regular guy who learned his craft as a workhorse at the National Lampoon during the late 70s. He refuses development deals, which is standard procedure by which writers are contracted to develop an idea into a script. Instead, he toils on his own in suburban Chicago, where he lives with his wife and 2 young sons. Hollywood is intoxicating, he said, but it's too easy to spend all day talking in the studio commissary. In Chicago, I get up, I write all day, and I go to bed. The only meetings are with my neighbors. I maintain a real ordinary outlook on life, he added. I am Mr. Mom, and I am Clark Griswold, the all-American dad, played by Chevy Chase in Vacation. Hughes' ambitions go far beyond those 2 lightweight comedies, each of which has grossed more than $80 or $60 million to date. He just finished writing and directing 16 Candles for Universal. So there you go. Here's this article, and it goes on and on and on. Great interview, but fascinating nonetheless. Crazy stuff. John Hughes writing a con movie. While fame for those films was in the future in late 1992 when the Rise of Con's script assignment would have been issued, Nate and Hayes' Mr. Mom and Vacation were all in the hopper, and Hughes was very possibly seen as a rising star. He certainly was by the following autumn. For a while, as Mr. Mom and Vacation had each racked up over $60 million at the box office, about $180 million each in 2021 dollars. Finally, and although this may be a coincidence, one of the recipients of this memo, Ricardo Mestres, would later produce 5 films in which John Hughes served as a producer and or screenwriter. 101 Dalmatians, Flubber, Home Alone 3, Reach the Rock, and Just Visiting. As such, the circumstantial evidence is pretty weighty. But what exactly did John Hughes deliver? Genetic Superman, the movie. From the coverage memo, here is the short synopsis of the script story. Bear in mind that this is a mere 3 paragraphs and half a page, describing a document of 130 pages and thus painfully lacking in detail. Names pop up and vanish, story points are only lightly sketched, and there's zero sense of the world these characters inhabit, other than that they love space travel, or they have space travel. There is a tyrannical Earth government, and Khan is a genetically engineered antagonist. It's not much, but it is all we have. So here you go, ladies and gentlemen, the short synopsis of John Hughes' potential Star Trek II sequel. Ingenious young John Pierce, first mate on the spaceship Wraith, is thrust into command when Captain Duffy dies in deep space. Before dying, Duffy gives Pierce a computer chip to deliver back to Earth, to anyone giving him the password Freedom. This is overheard by Victor Isham, navigator, a spy for Earth's tyrannical government. When the ship docks, Isham reports to clever, devious Lieutenant Khan, proud product of genetic engineering. Khan desires Pierce's betrothed, beautiful Mercedes. When Pierce delivers the chip, Khan's minion Steele has Pierce arrested and sent to the prison planet Thanos. Khan tells Mercedes that Pierce is dead, and she becomes his wife. Khan uses the information from the chip to play the rebels against the government to his own advancement. In a cell on Thanos, Pierce meets another prisoner, wise old Faria. They burrow toward freedom as Faria teaches Pierce diplomacy, languages, and the arts of combat. During these years, Khan becomes emperor, and he and Mercedes have a son, Aegis, who is 16 by the time Pierce and Faria complete their tunnel. The old man dies before they can escape, but he gives Pierce the map to a huge treasure hidden on another planet. Pierce escapes, recovers the treasure with the help of rascally Captain Thorpe, and recruits a fighting force on Tau Ceti with which to gain revenge. As governor of Tau Ceti, Pierce returns to Earth with Aegis, whom he has captured along the way. Welcomed by Khan, who has designs on Tau Ceti, Pierce quickly engineers the downfall of Isham and Steele. Recognized by no one but Mercedes, who simply begs mercy for Aegis, Pierce steals Khan's spaceship, and Mercedes goes to Thanos and releases all the prisoners. Khan follows him, and Pierce defeats him in single combat, then sends him out to the stars in suspended animation. As for Mercedes, too much has come between them. Pierce leaves her and blasts off with an Amazon warrior named Illis. Wow. So, perhaps maybe not the best story. I I really like the idea that Khan Noonien Singh, because of controlled genetics and breeding, he was the leader of a quarter of the world's population in the mid-90s. The genetic Superman started the eugenics wars. They were trying to take over the whole world, reunite the world under one whip, as Spock said. And of course, as they were defeated, Khan and almost 100 of his followers left Earth in the ship they dubbed the Botany Bay to go into suspended animation and find a new home. And hence we find them in the first season Star Trek episode Space Seed. This is pretty interesting. Now, there are comments about this story, and from the development department of, at the time, Paramount. And here are the comments. This is what the studio thought, or at least this is, as a reader, this is what I would have written, although I wouldn't necessarily have written this. Comment. One of the worst faults of this screenplay lies in closely following the plot and structure of The Count of Monte Cristo, which was written for a different audience with different tastes. Aside from that, however, there are so many flaws in characterization and execution that relatively little of this is salvageable. Therefore, per discussion with Ricardo Mestres, it seems more constructive to address the larger issues than to make page notes on a story which must be radically altered. Hughes seems to have approached this almost as a sword and sorcery project rather than the high-tech, high-adventure science fiction, which has always characterized Star Trek. He begins slowly, develops sluggishly, and tries to cram everything into the last third of the story, making it confusing and ineffective. With a couple of notable exceptions, his characters are unexciting, their dialogue florid and unrealistic. Most unforgivably, the story lacks humor and a sense of wonder. Except for moments like those in which Pierce and Thorpe outsmart each other while trying to retrieve the treasure, it lacks zest and fun. At its most threatening and scary, we should be spellbound by the energy on the screen. Khan is enjoyable because he embodies evil energy, full of spite and devious ambition. In the same larger-than-life way, Thorpe is a likable rascal. But the other characters, including Pierce, lack the juice to make them stand out. In Pierce's case, his desire for revenge seems melodramatic rather than deep. The revenge itself is too easy, too contrived and shallow to satisfy us. The period in which the story is set is one of expansion. Despite internal strife, Earth is enlarging her sphere of influence in the galaxy, pushing at the borders of space and science. We can assume that many of the artifacts of Star Trek and the Wrath of Khan have not yet been invented. Scientists of Earth are meddling with their genetic heritage. Khan is both a success and a failure, a genius with no conscience. And every ship returning from space could bring something to change the fate of mankind. This atmosphere is conducive to adventure on a grand scale, and a ferment which, to our characters, almost anything is believable. However, the characters themselves must be believable to us, with no hokiness. Their emotions, points of view, dialogue must be real within our framework as well as theirs. Within these parameters, we have Khan striving to bring the Empire under one influence his, and being almost strong enough to do it. Against him, we have Pierce, who represents the race's need for freedom, physical, mental, and scientific. Khan's weakness lies in underestimating his opponent in both a symbolic and material way. To narrow it down a bit, Pierce could be the devil, Meyer, young captain of a dilapidated freighter, hauling the equivalent of nuts and bolts between starports. He's more like Han Solo than Luke Skywalker, but his potential has been blunted by a lack of ambition as well as a liking for the flesh pots. Maybe he comes from an old and illustrious scientific family, which impresses the genetically oriented, but irritates him because everyone is always expecting more from him than he cares to give. Such a young man, representing both a past regime and a tendency to flout the rules, could be considered dangerous by the ambitious Khan, who has weaseled his way up the bureaucratic ladder with a glorious goal in mind. If Pierce crosses Khan because of his freewheeling ideas of liberty, Khan would think nothing of exiling him, as he has many of his others. But this man is different. Dropped on a planet from which there is no escape, amongst prisoners which include riffraff, political prisoners, and disaffected scientists, Pierce could make a transitional breakthrough and become the unifying force which unites them into a free state society like these semi-piratical forces which flourished in the Caribbean at one time. With all their energies bent toward revenge, and Pierce at their head, they could develop an invention which could get them off the planet, and it could be one of the devices which, in later Star Treks, we have grown to accept as a standard prop. For instance, suppose that after some deadly failures, the process enabling them to beam bodies elsewhere is discovered. This would get them off the planet with near magical weapon. with a near magical weapon. All of this should be encompassed as short a time as possible, because the second act should have them infiltrating Khan's empire in disguise with a ship which mounts the new weapon. Lest the going be too easy, Khan's scientists have come up with a new weapon in the meantime, which he has enslaved the planet. Again, it could be something which in later times has become quite normal. Now comes the test of will and guile, a guerrilla war in which the agile, quick-thinking freebooters are matched against the awesome but lumbering machinery of the Empire headed by an increasingly enraged Khan. It may be that the pressure goads both sides into developing new weapons, or more disaffected scientists could find their way into Pierce's camp, bringing their talents, but at all times the Empire is strong enough to swat the rebels. If it can find them so, they must remain in disguise, and the struggle must stay high-tech. Maybe they can invent a weapon which will be lost to the future so that later stories make no mention of it. If there's any kind of romance, this could be a place to let it grow. Possibly Khan has a genetically produced perfect girl to serve as his mate, but she has to him, a fatal weakness, a conscience and the ability to feel love. However, she's been engineered for brains and beauty. She could be an ideal mate for Pierce. In the third act, the battle is joined. Each side has weapons unknown to the other, and all of them are horrifying because the freebooters are outmatched physically. They continue to rely on guile, and it's by guile that they finally capture and defeat Khan. Then perhaps, in deference to the girl who thinks of Khan as a kind of father, Pierce doesn't kill him. Instead, he is sent to drift amongst the stars in suspended animation. Maybe this isn't the way to go, but whatever way we do go, we have to keep the plot bubbling and with high adventure. Yowza, yowza, yowza. Very interesting. And to be honest, as somebody who has studied Star Trek my entire life, I found this to be quite interesting. Not very good, but quite interesting. You know, what I do find interesting is it's almost as if John Hughes did not watch the episode Space Seed, which is kind of how I felt about Star Trek Into Darkness. I felt that Bob Orci and Alex Kurtzman, when they were writing the script for Star Trek Into Darkness with an able assist by friends of theirs, it was almost as if, did you guys watch Space Seed? Because it's pretty much all laid out there. Even in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Khan actually says, on Earth 200 years ago, I was a prince with power over millions. But we know very well where Khan came from, what his background was in Space Seed. It's all laid out right there. He had conquered a quarter of the world's population, probably all the way from India through the Middle East. And he probably controlled oil supplies and all kinds of things. I mean, we don't get into the background that much, but it's pretty laid out. And you can extrapolate a pretty good sense of where Khan was, where he was going, and why they left on the Botany Bay. And I feel that sometimes in modern Star Trek, as a fan of the show, it's sort of strange sometimes when I'm watching a movie like Into Darkness. I'm like, you all you ever saw was Star Trek 2, but you never watched Space Seed, or you never did the research. I'm sure they must have. I'm sure Alex Kurtzman must have watched Space Seed along with Bob Orci, so they could extrapolate from that. But that was the strange thing. I mean, the Khan in Into Darkness should have been exactly the same Khan as we'd seen before, which was Ricardo Montalban or somebody like him. Whether it was at one time going to be Benicio del Toro, but by making him Benedict Cumberbatch, it's like, wait a minute, where did you come from? And in the Kelvin timeline, the Botany Bay was discovered earlier, not by the Enterprise, but by a different ship. Peter Weller's people, I guess, found the Botany Bay drifting in space. But I think one of the things that's most frustrating to me as a Star Trek fan is all of these things have been laid out. You can watch them, and then you can read analysis of them in the Star Trek Spaceflight Chronology or the Star Trek Chronology or whatever Star Trek books. Greg Cox's excellent Khan trilogy of books, which is also a sequel to Assignment Earth. Even though I don't necessarily buy into the conceit of those books entirely, but there's a great extrapolation of who Khan was. Which leads me to yesterday's story in Deadline. Yes, there was a story in Deadline. Lo and behold, there is a new Star Trek movie being scripted. Yes, there is. And apparently, it is being scripted by Kalinda Vasquez, set by Paramount to script an original Star Trek movie. This is by Michael Fleming, which means you can take it to the bank. Mr. Fleming is always bang on with his stories. And what's very interesting, Kalinda Vasquez left, and the Star Trek character Kalinda, played by Barbara Boucher in the second season episode By Any Other Name. Apparently, this girl was named after Barbara Boucher's character in By Any Other Name, that Kirk, of course, gets boom, chicka, boom, bow, down with in that episode, even though she's probably a giant tentacled monster that's only taken human form. I mean, can you blame him? But apparently Kalinda was named after this character. And why not? Kalinda is, after all, a beautiful name. If I had a daughter in my life, I definitely would think that Kalinda would be a name that I would be considering giving her. But Michael Fleming yesterday at 2:45 in the afternoon posted this story. Kalinda Vasquez set by Paramount to script original Star Trek movie. Kalinda Vasquez has been set to write a Star Trek movie J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot is producing. Wait a minute. What? I don't know what kind... I mean, I don't believe in QAnon theories, but my God, can we just talk about Bad Robot controlling the Star Trek franchise? The hostage crisis continues, ladies and gentlemen. The Star Trek hostage crisis that's been going on since 2007, 2006 maybe. Bad Robot taking over the Star Trek franchise. Skydance financing Star Trek movies. Why? First of all, let me just break down before I read the rest of the story a little bit of math for you. The 3 Bad Robot produced Star Trek movies collectively have a reported budget of $525 million. Star Trek 09 apparently cost $150 million. Sure it did. Star Trek Into Darkness cost $190 million. Okay, whatever you say. And Star Trek Beyond cost $180 million. Sure, I believe you. Okay. But anyway, you're looking at around $525 million, let's call it that. We all know those movies cost more than the reported budget. I know for a fact Star Trek Into Darkness, as far as I understand, went over $200 million. And by the way, if I'm wrong, please, I'm happy. Please correct me. Please, Jim. Please help us, Jim, if you like Star Trek too. So let's just call it $525 million. Now let's tack on marketing. And let's be generous. Let's just say the marketing of those movies each cost $100 million. We know it didn't. We know it cost a lot more. As a matter of fact, the push into foreign territories for Star Trek Into Darkness, they were trying to make Star Trek happen. Kind of like Fetch in Clueless. They're always trying to make Star Trek happen in foreign, particularly Asian markets. So they spent a lot of money marketing Star Trek Into Darkness and probably not enough money making or marketing Star Trek Beyond. But let's just tack on $100 million to that. So you're looking at $825 million collectively, that those 3 Bad Robot Star Trek movies. Do you know how much they all grossed together? Now, keep in mind, by Hollywood standards, in order to have a hit, a real hit, it used to be that a movie had to gross 3 times what it cost. Now it's about 4 times what it cost in order to show any profit. Collectively, the 3 Star Trek movies reportedly, well, the reported budgets as per Box Office Mojo on the web, made just shy of $1.2 billion. That means you're looking at $825 million. But really, let's if I, as a betting man, I'll bet you collectively $900 million. Let's just say $900 million. Their return on all that money was only just shy of $1.2 billion. So you're looking collectively at $300 million in earnings. Now that's gross. That's not even what the studio took home. The studio took home half that, maybe. So basically, the Star Trek movies made no money collectively. 3 Star Trek films made no money for the studio. Not any real money. Not franchise money that, say, things like Transformers made. And yet, Bad Robot kept getting to make 3 Star Trek films. Now, of course, the hostage crisis continues because whoever made what deal between Skydance and Bad Robot, Skydance is David Ellison, his company, which is a good company. You know, they financed the Mission Impossible movies, but they also financed the Terminator films, and they financed Jack Ryan's Shadow Recruit and the Star Trek films. So as a stewards of a franchise, Skydance, and they do, well, Mission Impossible, to be fair, all right, they financed the Mission Impossible movies. They've actually been the de facto financier for Paramount's big budget franchise pictures for a while now. Well, for over a decade. So good on you, Mr. Ellison, and good on Skydance. Why does Paramount give this company control of the Star Trek franchise? I can understand Skydance. They're financing the films. But why Bad Robot? Why? The creative stewardship that Bad Robot has brought to the Star Trek franchise has not led to a box office bonanza. As a matter of fact, I dare say that they have spent way more money than they should. No Star Trek movie ever, up until Bad Robot took over, you can say that, well, the Bad Robot Star Trek movies made so much money. Not if you talk about how much they made in adjusted dollars or comparing their budgets to their returns. They're not a success. And yet, Bad Robot continues to be the stewards of the franchise. And have they delivered? Have they? Have they made a beloved Star Trek film? People like Star Trek 09. I'm not one of them, but a lot of people like Star Trek 09. Some people say Star Trek Beyond, and I love my beloved Justin Lin as a director. But, you know, using the Beastie Boys' Sabotage to defeat an alien horde of machines is pretty much, that's pretty much, for me, one of the lowest points of the franchise ever, and yet it's the climax of Star Trek Beyond. So, you know, I wonder, creatively and box office-wise, why are they still controlling the franchise? But anyway, they're going to perhaps produce this new movie that Kalinda Vasquez is writing. Now, look at her. This is a dream come true. If you're named after a Star Trek, the original series character, I am happy for you that you get this opportunity, because this must be a joyful one for her. But she did write Terra Firma Part 2, which was the Guardian of Forever episode of Star Trek Discovery's 3rd season. You know, Star Trek Discovery that was supposed to leave canon behind, but they decided to make a Guardian of Forever episode going back to Harlan Ellison's original idea, which, by the way, was rewritten by Gene Kuhn, Dorothy Fontana, and Gene Roddenberry himself to become one of Star Trek's most beloved Star Trek episodes. But Kalinda wrote this. So, anyway, I'm going to give Kalinda the benefit of the doubt. I want her to have a great experience. Vasquez has written on Star Trek Discovery, and insiders said this is a blind deal for an original movie that she hatched, one that expands her role in the Star Trek universe. Vasquez was co-executive producer on Fear the Walking Dead. She also got her name from the original Star Trek series after a character from the 2nd season episode By Any Other Name. In the 1968 episode, the character's name was Kalinda, and she smashed with Kirk. Yeah. Vasquez made a splash in teaming with Game of Thrones author George R.R. Martin on an HBO series adaptation of Roger Zelazny's sci-fi novel Roadmarks. Vasquez's TV credits include Marvel's Runaway, Once Upon a Time, Nikita, Human Target, and Prison Break, and she recently adapted Barrier based on a Brian K. Vaughan graphic novel for Legendary Television. The most recent big screen voyage of the Starship Enterprise came in 2016's Star Trek Beyond. There have been several attempts at mounting another movie, including one by The Revenant's Mark L. Smith that Quentin Tarantino and Abrams hatched, and another by Fargo's Noah Hawley. Both of these cooled. Tarantino stepped out of the first project, and Hawley told Deadline last year that Paramount wanted to go another way with the franchise and pushed pause on his film. Vasquez is represented by Kaplan Perone Entertainment and Bruce Gelman at Hanson Jacobson, and she recently returned to the fold at WME. Look, I wish her the best, but she did write a short take, and she wrote what I thought was one of the most egregious and horrific episodes of Star Trek Discovery ever. And again, Star Trek has not been in the hands of what I would think that are people who are the best stewards of the franchise. And I just find it fascinating. I find it fascinating that why is it that Star Trek has been in the throes of unbelievable mediocrity for the last 12 years? I don't get it. I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand why they make Star Trek movies that border on $200 million budgets when Star Trek has never been a franchise ever in its history that warrants that kind of money being spent on it, especially by people that don't really seem to dig Star Trek. Go and look up any interview with J.J. Abrams when Star Trek 09 was coming out, and the first thing he would tell you is that, I didn't really like Star Trek growing up. It was very hard to hear that as my favorite franchise, as it is my favorite franchise, by the person who's actually making Star Trek movies. Like, bruh, dude, what is up, my friend? Why are you saying that? Now, Kalinda, named after a Star Trek character, I'm sure that, you know what, immediately, she's obviously has a great television writing career, but she's been writing TV. And I really would love to have some kind of a classical writer, like a Nicholas Meyer, to come back in the fold. Somebody, why can't they get like a Steve Zalian to write a Star Trek script? Why can't they hire like Peter Weir? I know he's old now, but why can't you make like Master and Commander is one of the great non-Star Trek movies ever made with our boy Paul Bettany and Russell Crowe? Why can't they make a Star Trek movie like that? Star Trek Into Darkness is one of the worst big budget science fiction films ever made. Makes no sense. The film makes no sense. Can't stand it. Why is it that, I mean, come on. It isn't enough that J.J. Abrams has gone from Star Trek to Star Wars to now Superman. Why can't somebody else be given a chance to make a Star Trek movie? Why does Bad Robot, look, man, you know what it is? You don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. We all know that. I tell you that here. They have one hell of a great lawyer over there at Bad Robot. They've got a $500 million deal at Warner Brothers, but they're still going to produce Star Trek movies. You know, it's kind of like Linda Blair as she's being thrashing around on the bed in The Exorcist. Make it stop, please. Please, how about this? Hire some new blood. Make a Star Trek movie for $80 million. See if you can do it. Star Trek, there's a great script. Go back to Eric Jedrinson's Star Trek The Beginning, which is canonically faithful to Star Trek Enterprise. It tells the story of the outbreak of the Romulan War, and it begins what was going to be a 3-picture storyline that went from, it was the Odyssey, then the Iliad, then something else. Why not tell that story? They already own the script. It's already there. Why have another script? Is this movie ever going to get made? I don't know. I don't know what her idea is. It doesn't say in this article, but I'll tell you this. I've never seen something from a franchise's history besmirched as much as what Terra Firma Parts 1 and 2 did to The Guardian of Forever. Perhaps one of the most egregious examples of the hideous portrayal of anything from Star Trek's past. I mean, my God. But you know what, Kalinda Vasquez? If you're going to write this script, I ask one thing. Please make it good. Make it good. If we're going to get another Star Trek movie and you get the opportunity to write it, make the script good. Make it the best thing you're ever going to write. Because, by God, the Star Trek franchise for the last 12 years has been run into the ground, and it has been turned into something basically for the lowest common denominator. Why don't you make Star Trek great again? Please, I beg of you. Your name is Kalinda. Barbara Boucher will be honored, and so will the rest of Star Trek fandom if you write a great script. And you know what? Try and write it so it's not going to cost $150 to $200 million. Write a script that's $90 million. I know Bad Robot won't. They'll be like, no, man, we got to get our chunk. We got to get our money. We get $25 million right off the top just because we're Bad fucking Robot. Yeah, there's a reason why your company's called Bad Robot, and I get why it is, because I've watched Star Trek 09, I've watched Star Trek Into Darkness, I've watched Star Trek Beyond, I've watched Super 8, I watched The Force Awakens, and I watched The Rise of Skywalker. Why are you making science fiction movies? Why? Please, please, please spare us all. I beg you. Paramount, please vet this script. You know, you've got one in your coffers. You got Eric Jedrinson's. I'm not saying it doesn't need a rewrite, because it does, but it was only one draft. It's a canonical Star Trek script that you could make for less than $100 million with a brand new cast of characters, and it's the beginning of a trilogy. You already own it. You already paid for it. Check into that script. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. What do you guys have to say? You know what? I'll tell you what you have to say. Well, we'll get into this. And what we're going to do is read a letter from you. And this first letter comes from Stephen Thompson. Stephen said, Stephen says, Rob, the Shana of storytelling, the fast approach of episode DCLXVI has not escaped my notice. Given your penchant for metal, I would think that there would be a very metal theme to that episode. That would be 666. I'd recommend Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast, as it is obligatory, but I'd also throw in numerous Slayer songs, especially off the Hell Awaits. There are many others that Slayer does that would work. There's also Merciful Fate's Don't Break the Oath, with a special focus on the oath. There's also Metallica's Jump in the Fire. For real old school, Black Sabbath's Black Sabbath and NIB. Those are just the ones I can think of off the top of my head, but I'm sure other members of the Post-Geek Singularity can suggest more, and some that will, to be sure, have me face-palming and saying, why didn't I think of that? That's all I've got for now. Perhaps more later if the spirit moves me. Or would it be Satan? He said, insert maniacal laughter here. That was from Stephen Thompson. Well, Stephen, as we know, we are tomorrow, episode number 336 of Robservations will air. That puts us 30 episodes away from episode 666, the day we will celebrate all things satanic. Dun, 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 dun. That's right. We're going to have a satanic episode of Star Trek. We're going to talk about movies about the devil, songs about the devil. I'll probably read from Anton Sandor LaVey's The Satanic Bible, because why not? And let's face it, who's a better adversary than Satan? Although sometimes I think, after all, he's a fallen angel. He's the first of the fallen. He's Lucifer Morningstar, if you're a Sandman fan. And, you need the key to hell. You got to go see him. I love movies about the devil. I think the devil is a great antagonist, especially when he's portrayed by an actor. We had Al Pacino play the devil and Bob De Niro play the devil. My God, what more do you want? Old Scratch, 30 episodes away. I throw it out to you, imagination connoisseurs. What would you like to see on episode 666? How should we celebrate the beast? I don't know. Should we watch movies like the Hammer film The Devil Rides Out with Charles Gray, which I love? Should we watch The Devil's Reign with Ernest Borgnine and William Shatner? To the Devil a Daughter. I mean, my God. Devil times 5. There are so many movies with devil in the title. Old Scratch will be celebrated. What metal song should we play? We actually can't play them because we'll get a copyright strike on this show, but why don't we come up with a Spotify playlist where we can make a Spotify? As a matter of fact, I challenge all you metalheads out there, you make a Spotify playlist, and the very best one, I will post it on the show. You'll get no awards or anything, maybe no prize for me, but if somebody wants to send me a Spotify playlist about the devil, I'm all in. But remember, my very favorite song about the devil is, as you might expect, please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. Sympathy for the Devil. Those bongos at the beginning. Is there ever a better song about Old Scratch himself than the Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil? I don't think so. But anyway, Stephen, thank you for writing in. What a great, great, great idea that you gave me. So thanks for that. I appreciate it. Let's see. Hypocrisy in Hollywood. Really, Joseph, our man with the plan, who lives in Veston's neighborhood. Joseph is here. Oh, hi, Rob. How hypocritical the production of The Flash is. Last year, they fired Hartley Sawyer, a.k.a. the Elongated Man, over the offensive tweets he made a long, long time ago. At the same time, Warner Brothers keeps Ezra Miller as the Flash after doing something much worse, but whatever. I love the Flash TV show, but to say they are hypocritical is putting it mildly. They even say in the Season 7 pilot that his character is off the grid. The whole mantra of this show is giving second chances, yet they refuse to give one to Hartley Sawyer. I'm not defending his actions. Hell, I don't even like the Elongated Man character. What? I'm sick of this bullshit cancel culture for every bad joke anyone made in their life. Don't they think people change, better themselves, evolve, learning from their mistakes? Except for Gina Carano. There's even a conversation in the first episode of the season of The Flash where one Wells talks to another Wells and says, well, we lied, we kept secrets, we all came to Team Flash, broken men, and eventually, thanks to Team Flash, we learned to be better. It's like the writers of The Flash were talking to themselves while writing the episode. It bugs me to no end the two faces that are the studios and the execs approved to this kind of shit. Anyway, that was my rant for the day. Thanks for indulging me. Well, you know what, Joseph? I think you actually bring up a good point, which is forgiveness. Where is the forgiveness in our culture? I mean, some people, I think, have done things that are irredeemably bad. I think what Bill Cosby did was a pathology. It was criminal, psychological pathology where what he did to women over decades was, unfortunately, it fed his, I would say, evil pathology. He had it was one step away from, it wasn't murder, but it was certainly, let's incapacitate women and treat them as objects, dolls. It was incredibly disturbing what Bill Cosby did. To me, there's no coming back from that. There just isn't. What Harvey Weinstein did, again, it was a pathology. It was something I'm sure was deeply rooted in his childhood, and it's too bad that he didn't get some help for it before it was out of control. You don't come back from those kinds of things. You're not absolved of that because both of you knew better and covered up what you were doing. And you did it. It was premeditated, and it went on for a very long time. So, not good on you. But I think having saying things that might be wrong or saying things that are not kosher, not couth, I don't know if those things shouldn't be forgiven. And it is odd that a show that espouses the ideals of forgiveness would do this. I understand where people are coming from. You know, they don't want to get the bad press. They don't want people going after one another and all of that. But I would say that the real problem is not with the studios. The studios are providing entertainment to the masses, and they're protecting their investment. And they're trying to be sensitive to their viewers. After all, and that's what they're trying to do. And I know the hypocrisy, there's an incredible hypocrisy, but I think the real hypocrisy is not with people that are trying to navigate these waters. The real hypocrisy is with cancel culture in general. The real hypocrisy, once again, is with those people that go after other people on social media. They take it upon themselves to be judge, jury, and executioner for another human being's life. This is terrible. And I do not side with the people. I know they think they're doing the right thing. But again, who are they to judge? We have mechanisms. We have societal mechanisms like our justice system that when true evil or true criminality is perpetrated, we have a justice system that will take care of that. We all buy into that system. Well, until cancel culture, in which case you can just randomly decide to destroy someone's life. Because why? It makes you feel better? Who's the real threat there? Is it the person that maybe said something questionable? Or is it the mob that goes after that person? I think these are questions that need to be asked, and they need to be addressed. But I don't disagree with you. I think we always have to remember that forgiveness can be divine. And we have to remember that, I think. Our own Stubble McShave writes in with a confession of sorts. Stubble says, Hi, Rob. I have a confession to make. I am a murderer. I had to kill one of my darlings, and I'm, of course, talking about the short story competition. The reason I'm writing this letter is that the central premise for me writing my second story was very interesting to me, and I had to kill it. I haven't seen this premise done in sci-fi, but since you're more well-read in this genre, maybe you could say if it's been done. I came up with the central premise, and I thought, wow, that's an idea worth exploring. The problem, however, was that the idea didn't have any inherent character conflicts. It was more an interesting situation rather than a source of conflict. Maybe it's time to say what the central premise originally was. I was fascinated by the concept that we, in 100 years or so, would send generational starships traveling at 0.2 or 0.4 times the speed of light to other star systems. The journey would take 100 years or more for it to reach its destination. In that time, we here on Earth would have discovered FTL drive. We as a species would already have traveled to that star system and set up a civilization before the generational ships arrived. I love that concept as the basis for my story. However, as I said earlier, it doesn't really have all that much interesting conflict for the characters. It's more of an interesting situation. So I started to come up with interesting things that could happen to the characters, and after a while I realized something. My central premise that spawned the whole story was actually a hindrance. It took away from the character conflicts and felt tagged on to the story. It no longer felt like a natural part of the story, so I had to kill my darling. But back again to my original question. Do you know of any sci-fi story that has this as its premise? A generational starship arriving after hundreds of years to a star system that's already been colonized by their own people. If the people on the generational ship were frozen in stasis for the journey, then maybe they would meet their own great-great-grandchildren when they arrived. Thanks, Stubble. P.S. I can tell you that my second story will have some elements of the generational starship premise in it, but it's a very different story if I get it finished in time. Well, listen, until the film festival's all wrapped up, I'm not pushing the short story competition, although it's ongoing, and I've got some great stories already, just so you know. You know what, Stubble? I really like this idea, but I think you're missing something that's very important. When I was in high school, I read a book that had a very lasting impression on me, and it was by Sinclair Lewis, and it was called Main Street. And it was basically about a character who wanted to shape her community in her own image. Now, I think what's really interesting is, here's where I see the interesting point of your story. You can take this or leave it. But okay, you have a group of colonists that agree to be on a generational starship. Kind of like in the movie Passengers with Star-Lord and Katniss Everdeen. If you agree to get on a starship like that, and you'll be frozen for 100 years, and you're hoping to arrive on a planet that is a new planet, and maybe your characters are going to create a new civilization in their own image somehow. They have ideas. Maybe they're like the giant Mormon spaceship in The Expanse that was taken over, but you have you're part of a community, maybe a commune, like the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh or something. They built a generational starship. They want to go to a planet and start anew. And when the generational starship arrives, it turns out faster than light travel. People got there first. Maybe the people didn't know. They weren't able to find the ship en route somewhere. I don't know what the reason is. They couldn't find the ship themselves. But I think the story would be, I think that's a great premise for a story, but the actual story is, well, what happens when these people that had this dream of creating a civilization in their own image arrive at the very place? I mean, it was their one shot, and they arrive at a place where suddenly there's already a civilization there made by people that were born after them. And what do they do? What do they do if that's their dream and they arrive in a place which is maybe implacable and they don't want to change? And so what happens when your dream, the one dream, you've put all your eggs in that basket, that dream is dashed? How do you continue on? What is your life like after that dream happens? How do you acclimate? What happens when your civilization that you wanted to build will never be built because there's already a civilization in place when you get there? I think that I love the premise. I love that idea. And I love that these people show up and they're all excited and they get there and there's a bunch of people there to greet them. I think there's something really interesting about that story, and I think there's the idea. It's a kernel of an idea. That's the inciting incident, but then the story would be about what happens to maybe one person when they realize their lifelong dream is never going to happen, and that's the conflict. How does that person acclimate to the civilization that exists, or something? I like the idea. I don't think you should throw that away. I think that you can do something. It doesn't jump out at me as something I'd heard before, but it's quite interesting, I think. I liked it. I like that idea. Justin Jorgensen sends in a letter. Hello, Rob, and all of our friends within the Post-Geek Singularity. I wanted to write in and sort of discuss my thoughts on the first 2 seasons of Star Trek The Next Generation. I finally finished seasons 1 and 2, and I really enjoyed them. I did not love a lot of it, but I definitely had a damn good time. I feel from a narrative standpoint and just enjoyment factor that season 1 was slightly better done, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed both. If I had to rate them, I'd probably give season 1 a 6.5 out of 10 and season 2 a 6 out of 10. There were a lot of episodes I loved and some I did not enjoy, but I made it past them. Again, I enjoyed both. However, I am only 2 seasons into season 3, and my gosh, Rob, you were right. I mean, I am not a Star Trek guru for nothing. The way they move the camera around and Marvin Rush came on as the new director of photography. The way they move the camera around and just the overall feel of the show feels almost completely different to me. Wait till you get to the cinematography of yesterday's Enterprise, all I'm saying. The dialogue feels more natural, the acting feels more passionate, the camera movements feel more fluid and cinematic, and the music is just off the chain. There were a few memorable tracks in seasons 1 and 2 for me, but already only 2 episodes into season 3, the music and the show as a whole is just flat out phenomenal. So there's my analysis, Rob. I'm so happy that I stuck with this show, and Star Trek has become one of my top franchises, which makes me so incredibly happy. Wait till you see what happens, man. I mean, it doesn't happen for hundreds of episodes, but it still happens. I can't wait to continue with this show, and thank you for igniting my passion for the show and this universe as a whole. You rock, man. Yes. Thank you for that, Justin. Well, I'll tell you, a big thing happened in Star Trek Season 3, a big change, and that was when Michael Piller, executive producer Michael Piller, came on the show. And Michael Piller took over and worked with Rick Berman, was brought on board, and there was a very significant change to the storytelling philosophy of Star Trek that came about in Season 3 of The Next Generation. And that was, Michael Piller said, look, no longer are our stories going to start out there with some alien or some problem or whatever. All of our stories must begin with one of our main characters. So instead of having out there come in, we begin with in here going out. And that is a significant change, a significant difference in how to approach a Star Trek show. And that's why I think it was as successful as it was. And Michael Piller stayed on that show. He co-created Deep Space Nine and co-created Voyager. And unfortunately, he left this mortal coil much too early. But that's why Star Trek Season 3 feels so different. And also, Star Trek Season 2 suffered from a writer's strike. It was hamstrung from the beginning. But yes, Star Trek, the first season of Next Generation has truly awful episodes. Justice, Angel One, Home Fucking Soil, Ugly Bags of Mostly Water. What the hell were they thinking? Even though Walter Gotell's in that episode, General Gogol himself. My God, what a horrible episode of Star Trek. But you do have high points, like Heart of Glory, the first major Klingon episode, 11001001, which I love, even though it's got a one-liner ending, but I love it. You could have said no. I love it. Love it. Minuet. Yeah. The Big Goodbye, Coming of Age. There's some good episodes in the first season. And there's some, it is what it is, but season 2, you still get Q Who, which is the beginning of the Borg. You still have one of Rob Bowman's beautiful episodes where Data and, of course, Geordi are Holmes and Watson for the first time. So there's not, there's The Measure of a Man in season 2, especially on Blu-ray, the extended edition of Measure of a Man. That's 13 minutes longer. But check that out. Yeah. But I'm glad you're digging it. I can't wait to hear more about your journey through Star Trek. This comes from Evan Newman. Thank you for responding to my letter regarding the direction of the show. Evan Newman wrote an article to me that a letter that I did not read, but he talked about it was a fairly extensive and very cogent, well presented criticism of the show about how I was embracing more quote unquote woke subject matter and things like that, and he wasn't wrong. And I didn't read the whole article because he told me not to, but I thought he had some very valid criticisms, and one of the things that I said was that, look, I'm not trying to make this show more incendiary, unless I'm talking about Star Trek like this episode today, but there's just less to talk about with no movies coming out. I mean, I can't believe I am now days away here in LA from being under lockdown for a year. And it has been over a year since I've gone to a movie theater, and there has been little to talk about. You know, we get something like WandaVision. I mean, I did I think 12 hours of companion videos for John Campea in February talking about WandaVision. And I'm talked out about WandaVision, although I'm sure we're going to be talking about it tomorrow. I have to say I was extremely disappointed in the finale of WandaVision, which kind of bummed me out. It Game of Thrones did for me. But it still was a very handsomely made show, and I thought Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany did a wonderful job. I just think that the writing let us down in the end, which was surprising. I was surprised by that. But anyway, I'm not trying to make excuses about why I've delved into things like, look, for me, science is very important. And I think the way science has been given the short shrift of late is problematic. And when I read articles about mathematics and things about how teaching math is somehow, the way math is taught is not equitable in some way, shape, or form, I'm like, wow, that's so strange. I mean, it's odd to me, but so is a lot of things. But anyway, so that's what Evan was saying. And he goes on. Let me read you his letter. Hello, Rob. Thank you for responding to my letter regarding the direction of the show. As you expressed interest in reading that message on air, I give you permission to do so. Obviously, you do not have to do that, and if you no longer have the letter, that's okay. I think you did a fine job responding during the episode. If you still have it and choose to read it on air, I just ask that it not be posted publicly on the website and that you give a heads up to your moderators before starting. Rob, I continue to follow up response below, which turned out much longer than initially intended. You're also welcome to read this letter on air, but do not feel pressured to do so, especially if you read my first letter on air, which I did not do. You've already addressed my concerns once, and I know you have many letters to get through every day, so I'll be fine with whatever decision you make. Thanks, Evan. Well, the reason I want to read this, Evan, is because, one, I thought you wrote a great letter and made really good points, and they were worth sharing. So I'm going to read your letter because I think it's good. Regarding your response and examples you cited, such as 80s censorship culture and your own brush with cancellation last summer, I have a better understanding on why you continue to bring up what I termed outrage topics on the show. As I noted in my last letter, I too am concerned about the culturally driven censorship happening right now, and like you, I am free speech and anti-censorship all the way. The First Amendment was first for a reason. We must be vigilant against free speech rights being infringed upon, and from what you said, it sounds like this is your goal and the reason for continuing to discuss these topics. However, I'm also concerned that the continual and increasing focus about this subject matter has diminished the quality of both the discourse related to it and the criticism leveled at it. As a viewer, I sometimes feel like I'm in the Enterprise at the beginning of Cause and Effect when it comes to these topics appearing with more and more frequency on the show. You bring up an example of something new being canceled, you critique the cancellation, usually rightfully so, and discuss fears of what may come next. Thankfully, there have been no explosions on the Enterprise, at least that I'm aware of. But what is being accomplished? It seems that the show is a cyclical outrage bubble, where we are all screaming at the world as it changes in ways we do not like, getting our blood pressure up, telling ourselves that at least we're not like those people who are on the attack, but also that the worst is yet to come. But then, what? Yes, we are now aware of another example of cancel culture, but what are we actually doing to make things better? Amen. Several times over the years, you've brought up the story of the Uber driver who told you his philosophy on life. It was something along the lines of, I act as if I'm living in the world I want to live in. I love this story and have thought of it often, as have I, especially recently. Do we want to live in a world where we are constantly letting every new example of one wedge issue or another drive us into a rage? Do we constantly want to live in a state of fear, looking over our shoulders to see who's coming for us? Do we want to get into fights in the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook group over and over again about Gina Carano? I don't. Side note, the commentators in the Facebook group have grown more hostile towards one another recently, which I believe is being fueled by the continued presence of outrage topics on the show. It's made it a less enjoyable place to be a member of, and I feel badly for the moderators trying to keep up while policing it. Huge shout out to them. I know we must be vigilant, and I hear you on that, but I think this show is in a Roger Moore Bond-esque era of chasing the hot outrage trends of the day, instead of forging its own path as it used to. A path many, like myself, enjoyed following for so many years now. I also know this past year hasn't been easy for any of us, yourself included. Running a growing presence online while also finding new topics to discuss every single day must be daunting. And now you're reading a letter criticizing your work from a guy sitting safely behind his laptop in Minnesota. Who do I think I am, right? You're a saint for being so open, Rob, and don't let anyone tell you differently. Well, maybe don't tell your rabbi you've been sainted. I guess I would just challenge you to share more of what you love and less of what you hate. See, that's what got me hooked on your show and why I've seen so many movies and shows I wouldn't have otherwise. Sorcerer, Thief, The Fog, La Ventura, The Hills Run Red, The French Connection, Star Trek. I began watching the entire canon in release order, starting with Where No Man Has Gone Before, per your instructions, and I'm in Season 7 of TNG and Season 2 of Deep Space Nine, plus so many more. You've had a positive impact on my life and a negative impact on my wallet. Because I also started collecting physical media due to you, particularly from boutique labels that, again, had it not been for you, I never would have heard of. For all of this, and especially for so many hours of entertainment and thoughtful dialogue going back years, I thank you. Thank you again, Rob, for reading what became yet another long letter from me, which I assure you wasn't my intent. Evan, P.S. Isn't it amazing that we're about to hit the 1-year mark since the Tom Hanks news and NBA season suspension, which also means Elizaviews is 1 year old? I'm looking forward to an anniversary episode to celebrate, and particularly the local hero episode. What a journey the last 12 months have been. Hopefully the next 12 has much more positive things in store for us. I am open to discussing any of this with you further should you feel the urge. I didn't check the contact me box since it seemed to be saying that you must contact me, and that's certainly not the case. Well, Evan, first of all, what a lovely letter. And I thank you very much for writing into me. I got to tell you, I mean, you guys just heard this. This is the kind of discourse that I get from people that watch this show. This is really one of the only reasons. There are sometimes I feel I have a good show. Like I don't just turn the show off. Like when I turn the show off, I don't just like turn it off and walk away. I think about like sometimes like that, man. And it's always about me. It's like I either did a good job or a bad job. Did I convey information or did I feel like I came off as a prick? I think about it. But one of the things that I am constantly on a daily basis overjoyed by is letters like Evan's. You hear them? I mean, the letters I read from people are amazing. They are thoughtful. They're insightful. The level of discourse is way up here. And it's something that keeps me coming back to doing this show again and again and again. And I'll tell you, Evan, I do not pick topics simply because I want clicks or to be outrageous. I just pick topics that, like, this is what I was thinking about today. And I do find what's happening in our culture troubling. And I think about it a lot. And I think what really bothers me the most is I have yet to meet or read a lot of these people like Robin DiAngelo, who wrote the book White Fragility and has another book coming out. I've watched a lot of things with her and stuff she talks about. And I'm like, I am an advocate of understanding our differences and the things I do believe that we have genetic predispositions to be prejudiced. We don't like things that are different. And I think a lot of that, if something doesn't look exactly like we look, we're sort of genetically predisposed to not like those things. I think that's actually been bred into us from the very beginning. And yet, we're human beings, and we're supposed to get over our bad selves. And I really do believe that racism and hatred of our fellow mankind, fellow members of this planet, are one of the biggest hurdles that we have to move forward. And I've grown up in a world where I've constantly seen examples of that. And I love science fiction, fantasy, and horror. I want to be in space. I want to live in a Star Trek future. And I've always thought since I was a little kid that the human race is one race of people. I've never thought of us as being, well, there's Asians, there's black people. I've never thought about that. We're just human beings that are from different parts of the planet. And the differences that we have in our makeup has more to do with, well, where we're from on the planet than anything else. But that doesn't make us different species. We're one group of people. And in my life, all I've ever seen is the same old shit. People hate each other for what? Look, if you're going to hate somebody or dislike someone for real reasons. Don't hate somebody because of the color of their skin. That's absurd. They can't control that. You know, you should like people and respect people because of who they are, their character. It should always come down to that, you know, and their soul. And if somebody is bad to the bone, well, then hate those people, you know, and know that the world will catch up with them. But, you know, don't hate people for, and I guess, you know, the way I've grown up, it just bothers me. We could be doing so much more if we get over our bad selves. And when we leave the planet, we eventually will. When we go to the stars, we're not going to go to the stars as white people or black people or brown people or yellow people, whatever. We're going to go to the stars as the human race. The human race. We're going to be collectively representing all of humanity because that's what we are. We are one race of people. So I just wish that the people that are so quick to cancel those others for wrong think or whatever, it gets under my skin, man. It gets under my skin the way racism gets under my skin. And I see it happening and I'm like, we are living in the very best time humanity has ever lived in. It's great to be alive now. You can do anything. And yet the outrage culture that exists and has been fomented by social media, I'm like, are you paying attention? Things are way better now than they were 100 years ago or 200 years ago or 300 years ago. We are living in the best time humanity's ever lived in, and yet we're going to cancel things and take things away and destroy things because they represent issues that or points of view that we've left behind. We've become better. We understand things more now, and that's what drives me crazy. As a futurist, I'm like, all these bad ideas will get bred, we'll evolve out of them. And yet, boy, it's annoying. I feel like my entire adult life, the last 35, 40 years, has been spent watching humanity treading water. On some levels, we've done great things. Technologically, I'm talking to you. The communications technology we have is amazing. But that's why I get caught up in these issues, and it just irks me, and I want to talk about it, and maybe I'm working through my own issues. But what I'm reminded of, Evan, is that there are people like yourself that watch this show and offer me this kind of cogent, necessary criticism. And I promise you, I will endeavor to continue to not get back to, I'll try and keep I would like to make Star Trek the one exception. I can't not be outraged about Star Trek, but I agree with you. I think, you know, the fact that we get movies like Sex World released in 4K, you can now get 70s pornography restored in 4K. By the way, this disc does, in fact, have the R-rated softcore version on it, but why would you want that? We live in that world now. We can get anything we want. I mean, you can get a parody of Michael Crichton's Westworld and later Future World from the 70s with a beautiful die-cut cover. I mean, this is not die-cut, but this die-cut's the wrong word, but this is a beautiful, it's got raised letter, spot UV printing. I mean, this is a beautiful package. Who would have thought 10 years ago anybody would give us this? Well, you know who gave us that? Vinegar Syndrome. And go to Vinegar Syndrome, get their copy of Beastmaster, buy Liquid Sky from them, because they are one heck of a boutique video label. Anyway, I digress. But I want to thank you for writing in this letter, and I love the fact that I have viewers that are as thoughtful as yourself. And please write in whenever you want. And you're right. Let's get back to partying. Let's get back to having some more drinks in the afternoon. I've got a little brewski right here that I haven't even sipped on this whole show, but I'm going to sip on it now. Might be a little room temperature-y, but okay. That is some tasty. By the way, for those of you who might want to know what it was I was drinking, this is Voodoo Ranger Imperial IPA. I really enjoy this beer, and it's also 9% alcohol. So, hey, there you go. But thank you for writing in. I appreciate it. And again, I'm constantly blown away by the quality and caliber of the people that watch this show. And I mean that sincerely. This one comes from Omar94. Omar94 says, "Hi, Rob, moderators in the Post-Geek Singularity. There was a letter almost a week ago where a viewer talked about Billy Wilder and mentioned how Wilder was considered underrated. I was thinking about that, and I realized there are some filmmakers who I think are underrated, as their names are not recognizable to those who are not hardcore film fans like us, despite the fact they've made some very iconic and successful movies. Two filmmakers came to my mind about that: Richard Donner and Robert Zemeckis. You don't really see many people who are not hardcore film fans like us know their names on the same level as someone like Steven Spielberg, yet they have made some iconic and successful films. Not everything they did was great, but they still have some impressive items on their resumes. Richard Donner started in television, directing many episodes from different TV shows, including the famous Twilight Zone episode of Nightmare at 20,000 Feet with the almighty Shatner. By the way, if you guys have not seen the trailer for the new William Shatner movie, Senior Moment, Gene Smart and Commander Krug himself, Christopher Lloyd, oh my God, speaking of Robert Zemeckis, the man is going to be 90 on March 22nd, and he's making badass comedies. Unbelievable. Richard Donner started in television, directing many episodes from different TV shows, including the famous Twilight Zone episode Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. However, he did go on to make some very successful, iconic movies like Superman, The Goonies, and Lethal Weapon. He also made films like The Omen and Scrooged, which has become something of a Christmas classic. He also made a great movie called Inside Moves that I recommend everybody watch. Robert Zemeckis has made successful and/or iconic movies, starting with the underrated Romancing the Stone, then went on to do films like Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Forrest Gump, and Castaway. I'm sure there are other filmmakers as well, but Donner and Zemeckis are the ones I thought of first. Thanks, and live long and prosper." Omar, I really appreciate you writing in all these letters, but I gotta say, buddy, you're young. You're a young man. I grew up with Richard Donner, and I grew up with Robert Zemeckis movies, all the way back to, I saw I Want to Hold Your Hand in the theater. That was Robert Zemeckis' film. I loved Used Cars, and I think that both Zemeckis and Richard Donner were staples of the 70s and 80s. Richard Donner especially. The Omen and Superman the movie were huge, enormous hits in the 70s. And then, of course, Lethal Weapon, 87, was a big film. Goonies. Look, maybe it's a failing of my character, but I can't stand that movie. I even reviewed it for my high school newspaper. That movie has gratuitous kissing in it. Teen kissing. It's got gratuitous Martha Plimpton, and it's got gratuitous Josh Brolin. But, Goonies can't go there. I understand why people like it. But, I do think that both Robert Zemeckis, the guy did make Forrest Gump, and that did win the Academy Award for Best Picture. So I think over the last 20 years, Richard Donner is already past 90. And I think one of the reasons that we don't hear about those movies very much, or his movies, is because he hasn't made really. I think the last movie Richard Donner made was 16 Blocks with Bruce Willis. I think. I could be wrong. But, he was somebody that I was a big fan of Richard Donner's when I was a kid because of movies like The Omen and Superman. The Omen and Superman were huge, huge genre movies. They were gigantic box office bonanzas at the time for what they were, and Richard Donner was forever cemented into my mind because of those movies. So maybe it's a generational thing, but I don't think that Richard Donner and Zemeckis are forgotten. I would say there are a lot of other filmmakers that are that we should talk about. Paul Stutz, who's actually a Patreon member, which I always forget I have Patreon, but I still do. So, Paul, thanks for being a Patreon member. Paul Stutz says, "Hey, Rob, I've been watching your show every day now in 2021 and find it more enjoyable than campy is, which I hope doesn't offend you." Why would that offend me? Cheers to you, Mr. Stutz. Cheers to you. But to my question, I'm a sports guy, and I always like to see the best go head-to-head. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we know Thanos can defeat the Hulk and Thor without Stormbreaker, and know that cursed Dark Elf certainly kicked Thor's butt. So in your humble opinion, who would win between Thanos and the Cursed? Ooh. Thanks, Paul. Paul, that's a really good question. You know what? I'm going to say, and I'm going by the depiction in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think I'm going to go with Thanos on this one. Because Thanos has led armies. I mean, remember, before a man snapped, right? I mean, look at this guy. This is one formidable dude. And, I mean, this guy, I mean, look at that face. I mean, you take this off. This guy, I mean, come on. Look at that. He is one mad dude. And look, he's about to snap his fingers. You don't want that to happen. I'm going to go with Thanos. I'm going to go with Thanos because he was leading armies, and they were culling, before he snapped his fingers, they were culling half of planetary populations. He was out there taking on whole planets and getting rid of half their population. He was like Kodos the Executioner that's a Star Trek reference, on a massive galactic scale. God damn, I love this figure. How can you not love, I mean, ratcheted joints. I love Hot Toys figures. You know, I look at this stuff, man, God. I wish I had these things when I was a kid. I never could have afforded them, but shit, I can't afford them now, but I guess they're a necessity. I love Hot Toys figures. I do. I love the fact that they look so good. I love the fact that, I mean, the detail in the armor. I know it's not a surprise to anybody who's watched me on YouTube for the last 6 years, but god damn do I love Hot Toys figures. I can't wait. I gotta get like Moji cases, and I'm gonna have that whole wall over there. That's my dream. That's my dream, Ray Kinsella. A whole wall of those Moji cases, so I can have my entire collection of Hot Toys figures. Like, I want books to go behind. I don't like the clutter, man. I want to have all my figures, this just giant melange. And by the way, if you have not watched Fully Articulated or Hot Toys, you might notice that is, in fact, a Carolyn Monroe action figure from Star Crash. I know many of you have been sitting there this entire show going, oh my God, is that an action figure from Star Crash? Why, yes. Yes, it is. And it's the only action figure they've ever made from Star Crash, and probably the only action figure they'll ever make from Star Crash. And boy, do I love it. Anyway, you might not have noticed that, but Paul, I'm going with Thanos. I'm going with the big guy himself, because that's his life. That's what he does. Let's see what this is. This comes from Micah T. Micah T says, "Hi, Rob. I wanted to thank you for reading my letter on the show last week. With the risk of sharing too much information, I was listening to the show in the shower from a speaker. I often get lost in thought while showering. And was probably winning a past argument in my head that I had actually, in reality, lost when I heard you say my name. I quickly snapped out of it and dried off so I could jump out and watch you read my very first letter written in. I rewatched it a couple of times now, and I want to thank you for the morale boost it provided. As you can tell by this letter, I will be writing in more often with complete vulnerability and zero fear. With all that being said, I do have a subject I was thinking about and would like your thoughts before I go. I was wondering, why do you think people get upset about resurrections in comic book films? I can understand someone raising their fists about this trope being used in a variety of different types of movies, but not comic book films. Much like yourself, I also appreciate when films capture the details and intricacies that are in our everyday life. But if resurrections aren't accepted in the comic book film genre, what other genre would it be accepted? When I watched the latest episode of WandaVision and saw her bring Vision back to life, it gave me chills. When Wanda sees Vision in front of her alive and takes a step back into the black and white sitcom world of Westview, it made me think of souls reuniting in heaven. I know it's not the norm, but many people of different faiths do believe that this can be a reality. I'm a big fan of the MCU, and I think most of the resurrections have been handled logically. The source material these movies are based off of are filled with resurrections. And I think it's a unique fundamental trope to the genre that can work great if used properly. Anyways, what the heck do I know? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have a great week, Rob. God bless. Micah T. P.S. Free Dr. Seuss and fuck cancel culture. Micah, a good question, actually. You know, John Campea is always talking about the Marvel fake death universe. And look, I think it's comic book characters, for me, are they're always in conflict, and they're usually in conflict. The stakes are life and death. The planet, the Earth itself is about to perish. All kinds of people die unless our heroes step in to save the day. And I think in some of these situations, you have to kill your characters because otherwise there's just the threat is so huge. You know, if Galactus steps on you, you're going to die. You're stepped on. And I think that it has to happen, and we don't, like, it doesn't bother me. I think the important thing is, like, I have to tell you, so I can't reach it, but if you, the biggest comic book character death where, I mean, it wasn't Supergirl or Flash and Crisis on Infinite Earths, the biggest superhero death in my life when I was, because I've read a lot of comics in my life, that I absolutely could not believe it, was Guardian, Vindicator in Alpha Flight. When John Byrne did Alpha Flight, I loved Alpha Flight. In the first 12 issues, when you get to the end of episode 12, like 12th night, 12. When you get to the end of episode 12, issue 12, a shocking superhero death. A shocking superhero death. I couldn't believe it. I was like, that was one of those times where there are a couple times in comic books where I literally said something out loud. That was one of them. Another one was the end of Watchmen issue 11, when I'm not some Republic serial villain, Dan. When Ozymandias explains if there was, he basically says, would you think I would explain I'm paraphrasing here, my master stroke if there was any hope of you affecting its outcome? I already did it. I did it 38 minutes ago. And then you turn the page, you're reading this, you turn the page, and you just see Night Owl and Rorschach's face, and then it like gets obliterated and goes to all white. And the last panel of issue 11's, I was like, holy shit! I couldn't believe it. Like, I literally exclaimed like that. And but when Guardian or Vindicator died at the end of issue 12, I couldn't believe it. That said, my favorite resurrection of that character, I think it was in issue 24, 12 issues later, it was my favorite. I mean, I don't remember if it was real. It was the most cockamamie, convoluted, but absolutely correct way to resurrect that character. What they did, it was amazing. It was amazing. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And I'm like, hell yeah, man! If you're gonna have a comic book and you're gonna resurrect this character, this is the way to do it. Because I was so shocked by it, and that was in issue 24 of Alpha Flight. I loved it. And I think, like, look, you're not going to kill characters like Captain America or Tony Stark. Sure, they die, but you bring them back in comic books because the same character. We've been basically reading the same stories about the same characters. I mean, I've been reading them for my whole life, 5 decades. Like, I mean, come on, man. And the characters, it's all the same year. It's like, do these characters ever age? So if you're going to buy into that, I mean, these characters have been 35 years old for the entirety of their lives, and Captain America's been around since the 40s. So I think we allow ourselves, if a character dies, we know they're going to come back, and we forgive it. It's like, you know what? I've bought into the fact that this character hasn't aged in 4 decades or 5 decades, so why can't I buy into the fact that some character is going to come back from the dead? I mean, there are cosmic forces at work. So I think it's okay. I think it's okay. For anywhere else, like, look, I don't think they should have brought Spock back in Star Trek 3. I understand why they did it. When you have a character who's part of a big IP, you can't kill them. They can't die. They got to come back at some point. I know Wolverine died in Logan, but that was because Fox, there's no more Fox. They can kill that character in the movie. But if they made another movie, they would have Wolverine come back. But in that continuity, it was cool. It was cool that Wolverine died. It had poignancy to it. But you know that they're going to reboot the character, and you get to watch more adventures with that character. So I think killing people in comic books is okay, and bringing them back to life is okay too, because they are comic books. I would not accept it. Like, if James Bond died, I would not accept some half-ass lame resurrection story. I wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. But in comic books, I think the fantastical nature of what superheroes are, just it makes it okay. At least that's the way I see it. Let's see. What are you guys? What are you saying today? I don't know. Shall we find out? Shall we dip in? Shall we see where we're at here with people chatting away? First of all, let me get to look. The first person. Here we are. Black Philip Alvarez, our man. Black Philip Alvarez says, "Wannabe Professor X. Wannabe Professor X doesn't get to tell us Texans what not to make us. Wannabe Professor X doesn't get to tell us Texans what to do not make us look bad. We still wear our masks. Don't mess with Texas, brah." Let me read that again, Black Phillip. Wannabe Professor X doesn't get to tell us Texans what to do and not make us look bad. We still wear our masks. Don't mess with Texas, brah. What Black Phillip Alvarez is referring to is that the governor of Texas just opened the state. No more mask mandates, 100% open. In my mind, that might not have been such a good thing to do. As a person that I believe in science, I think we'll find out whether it was a good thing to do sooner rather than later. And I think that was probably a dumb thing to do. Like, why do you got to go 100%? Looking for that herd immunity? Has that worked so far? Look, I hope all of my brethren in Texas are safe, but I wouldn't take off a mask. I still wear a mask when I go out, when I go into any store. I have hand sanitizer, So there you go. I agree with you. Bishop Cruz sends in a super chat and says, "To your analogy, it would be as if a great brain surgeon ended up becoming a hospital administrator and suddenly patients started dropping dead. I might not be a surgeon, but I can judge the results." I think Bishop Cruz is referring to Kathleen Kennedy. I'll tell you, my position on Kathleen Kennedy is apparently, I'm on one side of a losing argument with people. Look, my defense of Kathleen Kennedy is based on the fact that she deserves respect, first and foremost. As somebody who has spent my life aspiring to work in the film business and working in the film business, she has my utmost respect. And first of all, I believe that everybody is deserving of respect. And the way that she is treated online by fans, I find abhorrent. She is somebody who has spent her life building a career, and her credits are impeccable. They're beyond reproach. And the fact that we perhaps don't like how Star Wars has been treated, I don't think is 100% her fault. The same way I don't think the way I think Star Trek has been treated abysmally as well, but I'm not blaming, I'm blaming the people that are actually making the shows. And a lot of people are judging Kathleen Kennedy by, I don't quite understand how they are judging everything that she does, because for the things like Rogue One that we like, the people, well, Rob, anyway, I understand where people are coming from. I just think that you can't sit there and say, well, just because somebody had a great career doesn't mean they can't fuck up. That's fine, but I just try and point out that as far as merchandising, everyone's like, well, look, there's Star Wars is not selling merchandising anymore. Well, it depends what merchandising you're looking at. Star Wars merchandise is not selling because I would say the characters in the sequel trilogy, some people like the characters, but there's not a lot of stuff in that sequel trilogy that connected with audiences. I don't just blame Kathleen Kennedy. I mean, Disney, Bob Iger, everybody, they had an agenda. They wanted to make Star Wars their own. And I think what people don't understand is the mandate from Disney, the stewards of the franchise, the people that own Star Wars, was they wanted to reinvent Star Wars with their own characters. That's what they wanted. Kathleen Kennedy had to abide by that. And so she has tried to be a steward. Now, when it comes to things like the High Republic, look, do I blame Kathleen Kennedy for wanting to make Star Wars more inclusive? No, I don't. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think the problem is the way they're going about it, the way that the cultural zeitgeist and the people that are trying to be inclusive, they're doing. Here's the thing. All the inclusion that's happening, I call it forced. Anybody who's trying to, you cannot put your political agenda before your characters and your stories. You will never tell a good story that way. I've been saying this from the very beginning on the show. That's what they're doing. That is the crime of, and remember, people are doing this out of the goodness of their hearts. They really are trying to do the right thing. They're really trying to do the right thing. And they're trying to create characters that are all inclusive and all that. I get it. But you know what? You're never going to create good characters. You're never going to create good characters if your agenda comes first. If you have to have a character on Star Trek say that I'm non-binary to a gay man, to ask that gay man to call that person by whatever pronouns you want to use, you have failed. You have missed the entire point of Star Trek. You've missed the point. If you're doing that, which they did on Discovery this season, I'm like, fail. Get the hell out of here. You don't know what Star Trek is. You don't know what an allegory is. You don't know what Star Trek as a storytelling device is supposed to be. You have failed because you put your agenda before your characters and your story. That's what's going on. And everybody's doing it because they're trying to overcompensate because we're in a weird period of time, which I don't get how we got here. I don't get how people like Robin DiAngelo are writing books like White Fragility. All of these things were taking care of themselves because ultimately prejudice, while it might be a genetic predisposition to us because fight or flight, things look different, we run away from them because we would get eaten. It's a vestige of our evolution. But we're human beings that we think we're people that we have passions and logic and intelligence and intellect. So we're able to get over those things. That's why we are able to get over our genetic predisposition to things that lead us to ugliness like prejudice. But nowadays it's bad. And I get it. But, I mean, it's not like Kathleen Kennedy is calling all the shots. She's dealing with Disney. And Disney as a company, which is no surprise. It shouldn't be any surprise to anybody. They're trying to appeal to the most amount of people and be as inoffensive as possible. So when we are now living in an age where everybody is hypersensitive about whoever they are and whatever they are and whoever they want to be, they're trying to act accordingly. And I think that the way it's not just her. And yeah, I know that there's a lot of people that disagree with me and the Force is female. She didn't make those shirts. Those are Nike shirts that everybody put on. And you know what? I don't have a problem with female writers, a group of female writers coming in and trying to tell great stories. But again, like male writers or like any writer who wants to tell a great story, if you're putting your agenda before your characters and stories, you will fail. And that's the real egregious problem. And I would blame not Kathleen Kennedy. I would blame the time in which we're living in, where people are possessed by the idea that they're going to change the world through their agenda-based storytelling, virtue signaling. It's all a bunch of bullshit, and you're never going to win. You know how you win? You tell a great story. You tell a great story to people that they love. You don't force an agenda down someone's throat, because if you're a great writer, your agenda is already baked into the story you're telling. But that requires you being a great writer. And look at Rod Serling's Twilight Zone. Look at the fantasists Charles Beaumont, Richard Matheson, Serling himself, Harlan Ellison. Look at the people, the great writers, Norman Spinrad, Jerome Bixby, all the great fantasists that wrote in television in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Maybe not so much the 70s, but the Twilight Zone, the Outer Limits, and Star Trek, the great morality plays that we got These authors knew what they were doing, and they knew if they had an agenda, they didn't put the agenda here. They told you a good story with great characters, and the agenda was baked into that story, and astute viewers would get it. But nowadays, like, no, we're going to put our agenda front and center. We have to make sure that you all know that we are virtuous people. It's so weird. It's so bizarre. Like, I don't get it. Just tell me a good story. Chloe says, before the talk radio shows that we know today, there was Oliver Stone's movie, the 1988 Talk Radio, a good movie that you hardly ever hear of nowadays. Eric Bogosian is searing in talk radio. Has Michael Wincott ever been better? It's your show, Bear. I love talk radio. It's so good. Luckily, I was able to get it on Blu-ray from Twilight Time. I love talk radio. I think it's one of Oliver Stone's best films. It's based on a play that Eric Bogosian, I think he wrote and starred in it. It was a one-man play, I think. I don't remember, but God, I love talk radio. Chloe, thanks for writing in about that, because I love talk radio, the movie. So good. Catherine became a member. Well, thank you, Catherine. I love when I see names like Elizabeth and Catherine with Y's in them. Elizabeth's name spelled with Y. Sheriff Carl sends in a tip and says, we need to cancel canceling. I went to an alternative school. I had rich, poor, celebrity, immigrant, smart, smart-ass, troubled, uptight, disabled, jocks, stoners, junkies, and freaks kids. Small school. We all knew each other and learned to respectfully coexist. We would fight amongst ourselves, and there was typical high school drama, but we were more often bonded over our shared experience of being in this special school. If anybody went through something, we rallied, despite whether we had anything more in common than our school. Look, man, I agree. I don't understand the whole cancel thing. Like, what, are you afraid of not being considered a good person? I think you're right, Sheriff Carl. If you're a good person, you're a good person. Point is, Carl goes on to say, point is, we are in it together. We learn to coexist. We learned what makes us different is what makes us, us. But what we shared also made us, us. I was exposed to a lot of things that were alien to my Ballard upbringing, and I am ever so grateful for it. Yeah, because people from the Pacific Northwest, like myself, are the most rational, normal people I've met in this world of ours. I kid you not. I meet somebody from the Pacific Northwest, I'm like, oh, okay. We're immediately friends. We get it. But I agree with you. I'm 100% behind that. I totally agree with what you're saying. And it was happening anyway. You know, our culture was moving forward. We are becoming more inclusive. We're becoming more respectful, more understanding. And now you've got people like coming along writing books going, you're born a racist. Fuck you. Born a racist. I mean, like I said, there's a genetic predisposition to certain things, but you're not born a racist. That kind of behavior is learned, just like a lot of human behavior is learned. I mean, I just think it's ridiculous. And we were doing okay, but now, oh my God, in the last 5 years, 6 years, academia, you know, it's so weird. We have to make everything. Why does everything have to be safe for everybody, especially from an intellectual standpoint? Why? Why can't things be dangerous and difficult and not easy to accomplish? Why does everybody have to get exactly what they want? I don't understand that. Life sucks. The universe is indifferent to your suffering. Work harder. Do better. Dig deeper. You know, why can't that be the norm? If I brought home a bad report card, my dad's like, why'd you fuck up? Why don't you do better than this? What is this bullshit? My dad didn't swear that much, but I mean, it's like, if I got a report card that was bad, it wasn't because I was being discriminated against. It's because I didn't do the work. It's because I didn't do the schoolwork. I didn't study hard enough. It was always my fault. That's the lesson in life. It's always your fault. And everyone's like, but we live in an unequitable civilization, so go make it equitable. Life sucks. People get cancer at young ages and die. Like this idea that, we got to make it all. No, man, you got to live hard. You got to talk hard. You got to believe hard. You got to do it, man. You got to get out and do it. You know what? Most people can do anything they want, really. You know, there might be a few obstacles, but I think there's enough people in the world. You can find enough stories that you realize that, oh, look, I've said on the show, I'm never going to be LeBron James. I started out playing basketball. You can see a picture of me in my little short shorts playing boys club basketball. I was never going to be as great a basketball player as I wanted to be, because also I knew that you'd have to practice a lot more than I did. I was never going to be LeBron James as much as I want to be. Is that unfair? in my life should I have known that I'm never going to be LeBron James? When little Bobby Burnett was dribbling when I was a forward, dribbling on my boys club basketball team, I knew that I was not going to be, let me use a Seattle Supersonics player, I was not going to be downtown Freddie Brown, much as I wanted to be Jack Sikma or Slick Watts. By the way, championship, 78, 79 champions of the world. Seattle Supersonics. Why don't we have Seattle Supersonics anymore? I don't know. Coolest name for a basketball team ever. The Supersonics. Just say that word. Say it. Supersonics. Doesn't that sound great? What a great sports name, and there isn't one anymore. Terrifying. But I mean, I knew, and that wasn't a bad thing. That was just life. I go do something else. Anyway, thank you for writing in, Sheriff Carl. I appreciate that. Calvin Bose is here. How was Braxton's birthday, Calvin? Braxton said he would rather watch a marathon of the worst episodes of the original 5 Star Trek series than watch one episode of Discovery or Picard. Well, Braxton, here's to your 6th birthday, and clearly your father has been imparting the wisdom of the ages to you. And I have to tell you, Braxton, I would not let you as a father watch Star Trek Discovery or Star Trek Picard, which saddens me dearly, because no 6-year-old should be watching those shows. Those are R-rated shows, unfortunately. And it's terrifying that they've turned Star Trek into that. Another thing that they should be held accountable for. Willow sends in a tip and says, trying not to give away spoilers, but I do feel somewhat let down by the WandaVision finale. Do you think it's our fault, though, for over-speculating and then getting upset when the show doesn't do what we wanted or expected? No. Willow, I was very let down by the WandaVision finale because the show posed internal questions that it didn't answer, or it played fast and loose. It was not a satisfying conclusion. It did not. The show was so beautifully constructed up until the end of episode 8. Episode 9, I thought, was an incredible cop-out on a number of levels. And it wasn't because forget the realization of fan theories, but the one thing that I wanted to understand was, if Agatha Harkness created Pietro, a new Quicksilver, and you make it Evan Peters, in the audience, you right then, astute viewers are going to be like, oh my God, is it, why get Evan Peters if there's no connection to the X-Men universe? You've made a connection with the X-Men universe by hiring Evan Peters. Why not hire a lookalike Aaron Taylor Johnson? This was something the show did. This is not something this is not failings in us as viewers. This was a failing of the show, because you either why do it? Why would he look like Evan Peters when you have clearly drawn a connection to the X-Men universe? You've instilled in your audience, astute audience that watches all these things, and knowing that you're making a movie called The Multiverse of Madness, and coming off of Avengers Endgame, where we see the quantum realm where there are different versions of characters, how do you do that to your audience and then turn it into a joke? It's bad writing. And I think the finale of WandaVision, it's not because our theories were proven wrong. Look, I don't mind if the ending was good. I don't need my theories proven right or wrong, but that is a big question that you yourself put in the mind of the audience, and then you screwed your audience. You know, you filmmakers and writers. I thought WandaVision was a beautifully made show. I was with it. I loved it until this last episode. I thought it was a complete cop-out, and I thought it ultimately didn't treat the audience respectfully. Some people might have a different answer, but it's not that the show didn't do what we thought it was going to do. It's the same thing with Game of Thrones. Some people think, oh, yeah, Daenerys Targaryen was going to go crazy like her father. Why? There was nothing. The Daenerys Targaryen's arc throughout the show of Game of Thrones, and Cersei Lannister's arc, was leading up to a confrontation between these two women. It let both of those characters down. It turned Daenerys Targaryen into a murderer who somehow threw away everything that she'd been learning through the course of her journey. And Cersei Lannister basically spent her last season on a balcony. It took an incredibly powerful character who took out the High Sparrow and all those people, and it turned her into a nothing, buried under the rocks. These are not These are not viewer expectations that are being subverted. This is bad writing. And there's a difference. There's a difference. And that's what I have to say about that. Calvin Bowles is back, and he says, if someone knew nothing about Star Trek and you could show them only one episode to show them what it was, what one episode would you pick? The Corbomite Maneuver. The Corbomite Maneuver. Or maybe Arena. Those two. When asking this question, I'm not asking for your favorite, but which one represents the show best. Well, I think that those two episodes do. I think if you're watching Star Trek, the Corbomite Maneuver and Arena, because you immediately understand where you are. You're on the bridge of a starship. And with Arena, you're meeting characters. They're talking about having dinner with a guy. You understand the scenarios that they're in right away. So you don't have to have any understanding of the mythology. You can jump right in. And both of those Star Trek episodes take us through a story that tells you exactly what Star Trek is supposed to be and what it actually is. I don't know if you can hear Tallulah barking her head off in the background, but she is. So you ask about 007, like what movie represents 007 for you? I would say From Russia with Love. To me, From Russia with Love encompasses, it's a great example of what the Bond franchise is. And if I wanted to update that, I would say Casino Royale, because it starts from the beginning. So, Dirty Soul Monkey is here, sends in a super chat and says, you can keep only one, Star Trek the Motion Picture, 3 years of Phase 2 series, or have Planet of the Titans. Ooh, that's a good one. Dirty Soul Monkey is asking, 3 years of Phase 2, that would be the Phase 2 television series they were going to make in the mid-'70s before they made Star Trek the Motion Picture. And Planet of the Titans was the movie that Philip Kaufman was going to direct, where Toshiro Mifune played a Klingon. Good question. You know, we have 13 scripts that we know were commissioned for Star Trek Phase 2. I would say, you know what? I'm going to take Star Trek the Motion Picture, because I think Planet of the Titans was ill-conceived from the beginning. And Star Trek Phase 2 would have been trying too hard to capture something. I think it would have been more of the same. I love Star Trek the Motion Picture, and I like the 10 years. I like the canonical nature of it. I like that they incorporated the characters aging. I'm going to go with Star Trek the Motion Picture. I'm just going to go with Star Trek the Motion Picture. Emma Bannon, the lovely Emma Bannon. By the way, I don't know if you guys follow Emma Bannon on social media, but her jokes, I'm telling you, one day her jokes are going to be the death of me. And I laugh despite myself. So, Emma, just so you know. Emma Bannon says, last night I watched Crimson Tide. I love Crimson Tide. Cracking movie. That's like Wallace and Gromit. It's cracking. Which is your best submarine movie, and why is it The Hunt for Red October? By the way, my granddad said that in his day, you could leave your back door open. Probably why his submarine sank. All right. I rest my case on Emma Bannon's jokes. He left his back door open. That's probably why his submarine sank. You know what happens when I leave my back door open? Something good happens. Just saying. Emma Bannon says, okay, you know, I have to say you're correct. The Hunt for Red October is my favorite submarine movie, but I would say Das Boot. I used to say Boot, but I was corrected. Das Boot is a phenomenal submarine movie. And I also, just because I saw it when I was a kid, Ice Station Zebra, I consider a submarine movie. Ice Station Zebra might be my second favorite submarine movie after Hunt for Red October. And before Hunt for Red October, it had to be Ice Station Zebra. But there's one movie, another submarine movie that I really like too, which is Gray Lady Down, which is basically a retelling of Airport 77, but with a submarine. A submarine sinks instead of a plane. But they bring them up in the same way. It's like somebody at Universal had the idea to do these things, and they did it twice with Airport 77 and Gray Lady Down. But yeah, and I love, even though Crimson Tide, I have a friend who's a submariner. I went to school with somebody who's a submariner, and he was telling me that movie's kind of bunk. But I love it. I love Crimson Tide. It's so great. I love all the characters and the music and the Roll Tide, the theme. Go Bama. Very aware, sir. I love that movie. Crimson Tide's great. Sheriff Carl sends in another tip and says, bad robot, bad idea. J.J. Abrams is so fucking overrated. I think Michael Bay has 100 times more originality than J.J. Star Wars. Star Wars made the box office it did because of its brand name. In my opinion, those movies are the most disappointing piles of shit ever made. I don't think you're wrong. I am not a fan. I am not a fan of any of J.J. Abrams' science fiction films. I'm not. I think his ideas are ridiculous. I think he doesn't even understand. He creates no verisimilitude in his storytelling. It's terrible. Characters. There's no real story in those movies. I mean, I was watching Force Awakens. I'm like, what is that movie really about? I watch it. I'm like, The Force Awakens is a movie to me that's not really about anything. It kind of is sort of like, okay, there's this girl and there's a guy and Luke's. What is that movie about? Well, there's no story. You go from place to place to place. He directs like he's light speed skipping. And I agree. Royce Freeman says, if a trans actor wants to play a non-trans character, is it a makeup artist's job to hide that they are trans if the actor doesn't want the character to be? Wait a minute. If a trans actor wants to play a non-trans character, is it a makeup artist's job to hide that they are trans if the actor doesn't want the character to be? I don't know. I mean, I think if a trans actor wants to play a non-trans character, I think they should do that. I mean, like it's like anything else. You know, you cast a character. I'll tell you flat out, when I was going to make the Axonar feature film, the fan film, one of the actors that I cast, I had sat down and talked to a trans actress, a woman, and I wanted her to play a Vulcan captain in the movie. I loved her. I think she's a great actress, and she's a spitfire in real life. I loved her, and I thought it would be great. And what was interesting, I mean, she looks like a beautiful woman, but she's trans. But there's something still. There was a quality to her that I thought would be great playing a Vulcan. Now, when I was thinking about that, I didn't go, "Oh, I'm casting a trans actress." I thought, well, I was aware of the fact that she was trans, but to me, she was just an actress that I'd seen before, and I liked her work. But I did think, I'll tell you something, I did think the fact that she was trans, her beauty was unique and brought something that I thought would be cool to the role of a Vulcan starship captain. So I think here's the thing. When you're dealing with casting people, it doesn't matter what kind of people they are, you want to cast the people that are best for the role. And I think if you want to cast a character, or you cast an actor that wants to be, or that a character that wants to play a role, if they're a trans actor and they want to play a non-trans person, it's like any other role. You know, if you think that person is the best for the role, you should cast them. I think if you're going to cast a trans person in a role where the fact that they're trans could be problematic for the role that they're playing, it's just like any other actor. You know, if there's something about an actor that's not quite right for the role, that you don't cast them. But I think that any trans person would tell you that they, you know, if you're a trans actor, it's not like a trans person is not thinking to themselves necessarily, I'm a trans person. Like a trans actress, a trans woman is a woman. I mean, obviously they're aware they're trans. I don't know if they've transitioned all the way or whatever, but they're a woman. So if you're going to cast a trans woman as a female character, you cast them. You know, if I cast an actress who happened to be trans to play a female character in my movie, I would not think of them. I'm not going to go, oh, I've cast a trans actress. I just cast an actress to play the role in the film. That's it. You know, from what I understand. Same way if I cast a trans male in a role, I'm casting a man in a role. I mean, whether they're trans or not it'd be like saying like, oh, were you born in the South? Well, that's interesting. Oh, you're trans? That's interesting. You know, it wouldn't be something that would affect how I thought about them playing the character. I think a trans person is, you know, if somebody's truly trans and they, however they identify, that's what they are. You know, and that's how I would cast them. So I don't think it's up to the makeup person, you know. I think it's up to the actor to bring if you want to cast an actor in a role, you cast the actor in the role. You cast the best person for the part. That's the way, at least that's the way I saw it. And having been in that position, when I was going to, if we'd made the Axonar feature film, I cast a woman to play a Vulcan captain. That woman was a trans woman, but that didn't matter. I didn't think about that. It was just something I knew was the case, but that's not why I cast her. I cast her because she was a great actress, and I thought she brought a really cool quality to the part. And in real life, she's a Spitfire. And I would love to have hung out on set with her because it would have been a blast. So, and I think she would have brought something really unique to that role, and that's it's kind of a bummer. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, you cast an actor because they're the best person for the role, or they bring something to the role that they can only bring. Jeff Yerke and Mrs. Yerke are here. Yeah. Hi, Rob. For post-2009 Trek, Viacom CBS were conned by the shiny lens flare, MacGuffin-driven shenanigans of Abrams and Kurtzman. I believe that every story break of modern Trek now begins with the phrase, "Wouldn't it be cool if?" Live long and prosper, the Yerk man. I don't think you're wrong. Yeah, I think that they were... Look, J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot has a great reputation and has a great reputation in television. And I think that he's got long-standing ties in the community. But the work, I just don't think the work has lived up to... And look, he's got Force Awakens that made $2 billion. And you can sail a long way on that. But, you know, The Rise of Skywalker, which should have been the triumph... Rise of Skywalker should have been an Endgame-like triumph. In fact, the entire Star Wars sequel trilogy should have been, but it wasn't. And I know people are like, well, see, Rob, Kathleen Kennedy. I don't blame Kathleen Kennedy for that. I blame the fact that they hired people they thought would do a great job, and a lot of things changed, and it didn't work out, but it's not just Kathleen Kennedy's fault. I'm not absolving her of responsibility, but, you know. Sheriff Carl says, I love hearing the words Slayer, Maiden, Merciful Fate. To me, the most evil song is the secret 66th track on Danzig 4, Invocation. That is always a must-listen-to track while tripping on shrooms, especially late nights in Discovery Park. Check it out. Well, I don't know what it's like to trip in Discovery Park because I've never done that there, but I'm right there with you, Sheriff Carl. I've been altered many a time in Discovery Park. Scotty R37 became a member. Patty at Large became a member. David Kukol became a member. How you doing, guys? Thanks for becoming members. Stub McShave says, thanks for your comments on my killed darling. I thought of doing something like what you suggested, but decided a while back to go in a different direction with it. Yeah, but you bring it up again. Do it again, sir. Do it again. Nick Parrish sends in a tip and says, what's up, Rob? So this is an important weekend for the film biz. NYC finally opened theaters. Even Andrew Yang had to get in on the action. My question, though, Rob, is will Raya and The Last Dragon be the biggest opening in over a year, or will the Cinemark beef ruin that? Ooh, that's a good question. Cinemark said they weren't going to play Raya and The Last Dragon. I don't know. Is that the case? We'll have to see. We shall see. I don't know, but I think it could be. I mean, with this weekend, that could be a big, between Texas opening and Mississippi opening and New York theaters opening. It's going to be a big weekend. Calvin Bose said, here is hypocrisy. eBay bans the selling of Dr. Seuss books, but did not ban Hitler's Mein Kampf. I wonder what they would say to that. That is true, Calvin. For what he's saying, for those of you, the Dr. Seuss books, the 6 books that they're no longer publishing, eBay has said they're not going to sell them. So eBay is censoring what their sellers can now sell. But yeah, you can buy Mein Kampf and everything else. Why are those books being banned? It's not like they were banned. The publisher just said, we're not going to publish these books anymore. Who is eBay to come in and say, we're not going to sell these anymore? Fuck eBay. That was something that's lame. Lame. And it is hypocrisy. Evan Newman, who wrote that great letter, says, thank you for reading my letters, Rob. You made some excellent points, and I thank my fellow viewers for listening. And 70s porno in 4K, this is the kind of positivity I'm talking about. Anyway, thanks again, man. You're a good dude. Look at this. Not only is this 70s porn, but it's got artwork on both sides. Look at that, man. Come on. And not only that, check this out. 3 discs. 3 discs. I mean, what's not to love? By the way, this was kind of a must. It's available. I have a couple of other 70s porn titles like Barbara Broadcast on Blu-ray, restored versions. You got to have them. I mean, come on. If nothing else, they're interesting artifacts of the pre-internet days. I'm glad you think I'm a good dude for that, Evan. You and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. John Miller sends in a super chat and says, I think the reason Kurtzman is in charge is because he's a yes man. He'll do whatever CBS tells him. He has no vision of his own. Yeah, but who at CBS is telling him what to do? I would love it if they had some visionary. If they had a Kevin Feige, imagine what they could do with Star Trek. Ziggy says, did you ever read the comic The American? I don't think I did. I know the comic, but when you say The American, I keep seeing Howard Chaykin's American Century. But I don't think I read The American. I'm not sure. Nick Parrish says, so Rob, would you put money on there being a Hollywood biopic about Andrew Cuomo for the next 10 years? These news articles that are coming out about him are insane. Now the breaking news is that his emergency COVID powers have been revoked. Yeah. Andrew Cuomo, I have to say, it's unbelievable to me because during the pandemic, when it first broke out, he was doing a daily report. Every single day, he was sitting in front of the press, taking their questions, fielding their responses. I admired him. And now you find out they were trying to cover up. I mean, people knew that there was shenanigans there, but man, between going after the hot young ladies and sentencing people to death in nursing homes, not looking very good for Andrew Cuomo. And I also feel bad for his brother. It's going to blow back on his career as a journalist. Not good for anyone. Cardinal Sin is here. Laser Bob. You know what they did to Laser Bob? Thanks for everything and another great show. You're a class act, my friend. Live long and prosper. Well, thank you, Cardinal Sin. It was fun going on your birthday stream with you and Iron Man, Mexican Iron Man. That was fun. Swack Props. Now that WandaVision is over, I'm all hyped up for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I got to tell you, Cal, I got a package in the mail today. Actually, I didn't get the package. Elizabeth got the package. And it was something, I'm not going to spoil what it is, because we'll talk about it tomorrow on Whining About Movies. But my man Cal, Swack Props, made Elizabeth something she even suggested that he make early on when we first started Whining About Movies. One of our very earliest, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but if you look at what our earliest Whining About Movies are, you might be able to tell. I was so touched by what you did, man, and the letter you wrote. That was like one of the nicest things anyone's ever done, not for me necessarily, but for Elizabeth. And you know what you did, and it was amazing. It was amazing. Cal from Swack Props, if you look, I can't stress enough. If you want to get an interesting, unique gift or give something to somebody, Cal makes works of art. And what he does is he specializes in let's take a gander. I was showing this just the other day to somebody. Which one shall I open? I always have these close by because, okay, so Swack Props makes Cal. Let me see if I got. I hope it's in here. I think this is it. So he makes. I gotta show. Yeah, wait. Let me see. This is. Oh man, do I have to put? Oh, okay, good. Okay, I got to go full screen for this because so Cal is one of the longest members of the Post-Geek Singularity here. I'm just going to show this again. I know I've shown this before on the show, but there's new subscribers, and you got to see it. So Cal makes paper products that are in movies. I mean, they're better. Like I've been on so many sets. I've worked in the art department. The quality of his work, like you might recognize this. This is one of Cal's things. This is a mountain. This is from Lord of the Rings, the map to the Misty Mountains. Now, this is pretty badass, right? But look at this. I want to see if you can see it. Look at that. You know, you have to have the light to see it, but how badass is this? He made this. I mean, this is better than the actual props they made for the movie. I mean, look at the weathering. I mean, if you can see it, the way he does it, the holes in the paper. But this dude, that is next level. Put that closer. I mean, I need. Things fall. That is amazing. I mean, this is amazing stuff. So Cal made something for Elizabeth that she suggested that he make, and it's amazing. I need to get that. Framed, Cal. But anyway, I want to thank you for that. Wait, did you say something? Let me go back. And you were saying what you were saying. Now that WandaVision is over, I'm all hyped up for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Me too. Bring on the Tom Clancy-esque action. But thank you so much for what you did. But we'll talk about that more on tomorrow's Whining About Movies. Stub McShave sends in a tip and says, the no-death MCU doesn't bother me that much if they're prepared to do worse things to them. Unfortunately, they haven't done all that much. If a beloved character does something truly heinous, it can be worse than a character's death for the audience. I agree with that. I think you're right. David Kukol says, Rob, the amount of broadcasting you do on your own shows and guesting on others is astonishing. How do you find the energy? Many thanks. Mountains of cocaine. No, I'm kidding. You know what? I would never have a cocaine habit because you know why? That would curtail my Hot Toys habit. And no, I'm just kidding. You know what? It's just fun. It's fun. I mean, the things that I really like to do, like when I'm directing, I go 24/7. I 12 hours I can be on my feet. I hardly ever sit down. I just like it. I like broadcasting, connecting with people. It's fun. But yes, I do a lot of broadcasting. It's crazy. Bob Quall says, I thought of rumors of a John Hughes outline for SETI Alpha Vacation. That's very funny. Ash Chauhan, right? Chauhan? If I got that right. Thank you, Ash, for becoming a member. Chris, I can never get this right. Stenfenagel, I love that name. Stenfenagel says, it would be great if CBS would upgrade DS9 to HD and stream it exclusively on Paramount Plus. Fairly certain DS9 in HD would get more views than New Trek. It would, but it would take 4 years to do it right, and it would take $20 million. So, Roger Grind says, have you seen the new Das Boot series? Quite nice, but the original is unmatched. I have not seen the new Das Boot series. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, that brings us to the end of Robservations episode number 635. I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank our loyal viewers who write letters to the Burnettwork.net. If you want to send me a letter at the Burnettwork.net and have me read it on the show, I will. If you don't want me to read it, please say don't read this. Otherwise, I'll just assume I can read it. Also, I want to thank my moderating staff, beginning with Mike Bodden and the Richard. I have a lot of new moderators. Louise X Sparrow is here, and I want to thank her for being here, and the Richard, and of course, who else is here? I don't even know. Justin Toner's here. I don't know who else is here, but I think the three. Oh, wait, hang on. There's more. And wait, there's more. Darren J. Seeley is here. Hello, Darren J. Seeley. How are you? Thanks for moderating. I appreciate that. But I think that's everybody. But I have a great moderating staff. They do a lot of work, and they're getting rich doing it, let me tell you. So thank them. They're great moderators. And I want to thank you, everybody, for supporting the channel via Super Chats and tips, and also writing letters. And if you want to, please hit the like button if you like these chats. Smash the notification button because that helps the analytics, and we'll keep going. So it's all good. Tomorrow, we're actually going to bring Whining About Movies back. We're going to be doing All That Jazz finally, and then on Sunday, we're going to be doing Local Hero, which is a delightful movie, and we're going to spend the rest of March doing the Viewers' Choice Awards that we didn't do in February. But we're coming back, and we are about to celebrate. We're, I think, a week away, maybe? A little over a week away, maybe 2 weeks away, a little less than 2 weeks from the Whining About Movies 1-year anniversary, which is crazy. Crazy. So thanks for watching, and of course, you'll see what swag props, what Cal made for Elizabeth tomorrow night on our All That Jazz episode. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better day.